Listen to this podcast now
on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Idea Gen Global Podcast with George Sifakis.
I'm George Sifakis. In a world overflowing with noise, there is one forum where the world's smartest voices connect, where visionaries sit at the same table as innovators, and great minds don't just talk, they act.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Well, pardon me if I find it amusing that the same critics who couldn't figure out that Joe Biden was a veritable vegetable in diapers during his presidency are now claiming, completely without foundation, that Donald Trump is seriously ill, declining, and near death. I must tell you, I was with the president in the Oval Office approximately 10 days ago, and it's the exact same Donald Trump that I've known for almost 50 years. He is in excellent health. If you saw the video of him playing golf over the Thanksgiving holiday, you can see that he continues to be a scratch golfer, something that's tough if you're near death. At the same time, the House Oversight Committee has produced the audios and videos of various Biden staffers admitting that they rarely saw the president, that the president was non-compos mentis through most of his presidency. Just shows you the two-tiered justice system and the fakeness of the fake news. Speaking of fake, Senator Cory Booker got married late last week. He married a woman named Alexis Lewis. This is fooling no one. I think Senator Booker's gotten married sort of to push back against the many questions regarding his long bachelorhood, but more importantly, to prepare for a campaign for president of the United States. I wrote a book in 2020 called Spartacus, the real Cory Booker story. The book didn't do that well because, well, he was running for president in 2020 and he didn't do that well. I'm going to republish that book because the highlight of it is the fact that as the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, Cory Booker embezzled $200,000 from the city of Newark water authority called Watershed. It was laundered through his law firm. He claimed when this became public that he did not cast a vote as an ex officio member of the Water Authority in favor of the $200,000 payment to his own law firm. But I got the minutes from the meeting. It's a public record showing he was not only present, but he voted yes. When he was confronted with the $200,000 heist, Senator Booker first said it was a buyout from his law partners. Then he said it was deferred compensation. It became pretty clear it was what you call a bribe. In all honesty, I think Cory Booker will do about as well as he did in 2020 in his presidential bid, but there you have it. It was Friday morning that I sent President Trump a 9-page letter from former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, in which he made the compelling case that he essentially had been framed by the Biden Justice Department. Here was a president of Honduras who had gotten international acclaim for fighting drug trafficking, but based solely on the testimony of two convicted drug traffickers who were prosecuted and convicted during the presidency of Juan Orlando Hernandez. Hernandez was put on trial in New York City in the Southern District of New York. Now, I read the entire trial transcript before I decided to send President Trump this letter. I found it very curious that the defense attorney for President Hernandez became ill during his trial and suddenly arbitrarily cut off all communications with his client. And then the court-appointed defense attorney functioned more like one of the prosecutors than he did a defense attorney. So the bottom line of this remains the same. The mainstream media hates this, but I'll publish a longer piece about it. Juan Orlando Hernandez was framed. So for those in the mainstream media who say, oh, well, Trump is fighting the Marxist narco drug traffickers in Venezuela, yet he's turned around and pardoned a guy who was convicted of drug trafficking, that conviction is a fugazi. It's a fraud. It was a frame by the exact same people who tried to frame Donald Trump for Russian collusion, the same people who tried to frame him in the January 6th matter, the same people who tried to frame him in connection with his perfectly legal retention of presidential documents, which under the Presidential Records Act, he was entitled to hold on to. So this is an act of justice and mercy. The president has done the right thing. USA Today, The Washington Post, Politico, a number of other reporters calling me even as we speak about this matter. But instead of talking to them, I'm talking to you right now in the Stone Zone. If you've just tuned in, strap in because we've got some more politics for you. Thought it was pretty funny when Governor Tim Walz, this guy is as weird as they come, Tampon Tim. The idea of Tampon Tim calling President Trump weird when the guy walks around and jumps around like a fruitcake is really strange. But he, over the weekend, said that President Donald Trump, once again, he's slipping mentally and physically. That's a lie. And that Trump had mentioned in a press conference that he had an MRI examination. So Walz demanded that Trump make the MRI investigation test results public. This afternoon, the president made those results public. He had a normal result from the test. Showed no deterioration whatsoever in Trump's physical or mental health. Perhaps Tampon Tim is trying to cover up for the fact that over 400 employees with the Minnesota Department of Human Services have blown the whistle against the Minnesota governor, confirming that he repeatedly ignored warnings about a $250 million fraud, and that he tried to retaliate against whistleblowers to shut them up about what is now known as the Somalian Medicaid fraud scandal. These Department of Human Services workers are now speaking out through their X account, accusing Walz, along with a number of other elected lawmakers in the Democrat Farm Labor Party of Minnesota, with ignoring and suppressing the fraud scandal in an attempt to protect their Somalian political cronies who have become an important constituency amidst the demographic replacement plan of which Minneapolis is a key center. The U.S. Justice Department recently announced that a 78th defendant has now been charged in the Feeding Our Future scandal, in which federal prosecutors allege there was over $250 million in fraudulent claims to a federal child nutrition program. Over 50 people have already been convicted, and money from the scandal has actually been traced to the infamous Al-Shabaab terrorist group in Somalia. This is a massive scandal, and the Stone Zone salutes those historic whistleblowers for speaking out. More need to join them, and Tampon Tim actually needs to be held to account. President Trump recently called him the R word, regardless of whatever affliction he may have. It looks to me like Tim Walz is the guy who belongs behind bars. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump has sent warships to the Caribbean as part of his maximum pressure campaign on Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro. Right now, this involves 11 ships and 15,000 U.S. troops. They will continue the strikes against Venezuelan drug boats to send a strong message that Maduro's days as a dictator and a Marxist narco-drug trafficker are numbered. Over the weekend, President Trump stated that the airspace over Venezuela will be closed in the very near future, and he told Maduro in a phone conversation that he must abdicate now if he wishes to survive. Maduro reportedly begged for amnesty from President Trump, which was not granted. While we should be careful about any protracted, endless foreign war that involves regime change war in Venezuela, which is not what I think President Trump is pursuing, President Trump's muscular policies in the region are achieving serious results in Latin America, and this is therefore a bulwark against communism in our hemisphere. I would point out that in Honduras, in the wake of President Trump's historic announcement that he would pardon the former President Juan Orlando Hernandez, the National Party led by Tito Asfura, the pro-U.S. anti-communist, anti-drug trafficker candidate in Venezuela, won yesterday's general election in Honduras. Now, it's interesting to me that the Central Counting Bureau there has controlled by the current Marxist government has refused so far to certify the fact that Asfura won, but this is a very positive development in this hemisphere. President Trump has maximum pressure on the Venezuelans. Before long, I think Maduro will be gone. But he has also now moved aggressively to ensure that Honduras does not become another outpost for the narco-Marxist traffickers, and that the pro-China governments in our hemisphere, which right now consists of Venezuela, Honduras, and Cuba, remain limited. Maduro must go. There are some, like my friend Laura Loomer and others, who argue that perhaps we could make a deal to keep Maduro in place if only Chevron is allowed to keep their very, very lucrative oil leases in the country. This is crony capitalism at its worst. I'm opposed, and I think Maduro must go. But I don't see this, once again, it's kind of like Trump's strategic strike against the nuclear weapons development program in Iran. I think this will be a limited engagement in which we achieve our strategic goals and we withdraw. Meanwhile, China is creating a pact to try to develop rare earth minerals, and they're attempting to leave the United States in the lurch. Because of bad trade deals and bad policies in the past, China, unfortunately, has become the worldwide leader in rare earth minerals and important in the development of technological components. For example, the chip in your cell phone. Perfect example. Chinese Premier Li Qiang made the announcement of what they are calling an International Economic and Trade Cooperation Initiative on green minerals. At least 19 nations, including Cambodia, Nigeria, Myanmar, and Zimbabwe, under the jurisdiction of the UN Industrial Development Organization, are expected to participate in this alliance, which is designed to keep China's the wayside under sleepy Joe Biden's presidency, and he continues to use tariffs as a weapon that can bring China to heel at a time when the U.S. must reassert its dominance to change long persistent imbalances in our trade policies. If you're just tuning in, I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to The Stone Zone here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. We're addicted to politics here on The Stone Zone. We've got more for you when we come up. Every day, 5 days a week, we talk news, history, politics, food, and dare I say it, culture. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial because we'll be right back with more right here in The Stone.
This shrimp and coconut sauce is divine. What's your secret?
Goya coconut milk.
How does it taste so good?
It's all in that real coconut flavor and that rich, creamy texture.
What about thickeners and added sugars?
None. Just smooth, coconutty goodness.
What can I make with it?
From curries to sweet treats like coconut flan, the possibilities are endless.
Goya coconut milk. Take your cooking to the next level. No question about it. Find it in the Goya section of your local grocery store. If it's Goya, it has to be good.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. Am I the only one who noticed this? So Ramanullah Lakwal, the man who is accused of shooting and killing one of two U.S. Army National Guardsmen, specifically killing Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, 20 years old, and seriously wounding Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf. Doctors now tell us that Wolf, thank God, will survive. Previously worked for the Central Intelligence Agency. In fact, he was trained extensively by them. But he actually entered the United States in 2021 as part of the evacuation of Afghanis after Joe Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. So by law, This individual had 1 year to apply for asylum, but he didn't apply, and the 1 year ran out. He didn't get asylum until 2024, 3 years after it was legally too late to be granted asylum. Nothing yells CIA operative other than special treatment. Remember when Lee Harvey Oswald defected to Russia, and then suddenly he was back in the United States and had somehow magically reclaimed his citizenship? Like I say, nothing screams CIA operative like special treatment. Pardon me if I'm skeptical, but I don't think it's coincidental that Senator Slotkin from Michigan formerly worked for the CIA. She's one of those who called on American service members to ignore orders from the commander-in-chief if they deemed those orders to be illegal. And she is aided by that by Congressman Goodlander of New Hampshire, who happens to be the wife of Jake Sullivan, one of the major architects of the Russian collusion hoax. Is this a coincidence, or are we about to have a color revolution, as my good friend General Flynn has? Something very dark is afoot in America. There are those who cannot stand the results of the 2024 election and the fact that Donald Trump is determined to put in place policies to reassert our sovereignty, to reassert our constitutional integrity, and to make America great again. Something very dark is about to happen in America. If you heard my great interview with General Michael Flynn this weekend, you would know that we're right about this. In the meantime, I asked the open question. It has now been many months since the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, exposed John Brennan, James Comey, General James Clapper, Vice President Joe Biden, President Barack Obama himself in the Russian collusion hoax, the greatest single dirty trick and abuse of power in which they used totally fabricated evidence to try to frame and remove Donald Trump from office. And I asked this question to my friends over at the Department of Justice. Is anyone going to be held accountable? Is anyone going to be prosecuted for this act of seditious conspiracy and treason? Until they are, Republicans cannot expect to win a second round of congressional elections in 2026. We're waiting, and we're waiting patiently to see whether anyone will be held accountable. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone on the Red Apple Audio Network.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. Well, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is finally starting to feel the heat. After years as the golden boy of the globalists, the former actor-comedian thought he could do no wrong. Zelensky thought he could embezzle millions of our tax dollars, spend it on his vices, such as his cocaine habit, enrich his cronies, yet send his own people to the front line to be chopped up in the meat grinder of the Ukraine-Russia war. This disgusting charade has gone on for far too long, but it appears to me that it's finally come to an end as the people, both in Ukraine and the United States, are sick of this cocaine-fueled dwarf's corrupt antics. Zelensky's chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, resigned last week as part of the anti-corruption investigation searching his home. This may be part of the Anti-Corruption Bureau's investigation into $100 million that was embezzled in Ukraine. Think Hunter Biden and Burisma on steroids. Businessman Timur Mindich is at the center of this scandal. Mindich reportedly blew through the money he received as part of his $100 million heist of our tax dollars. He actually spent his money on a gold-plated toilet. I kid you not. Now, he and Zelensky go way back as they were partners in the entertainment industry for years before Zelensky divested in the company to become president, but the two men remained extremely close. It's no longer plausible that Zelensky is unrelated to all this corruption surrounding. Without a shadow of doubt, he's actually the kingpin of all of it. Even in this position, Zelensky still drags his heels on agreeing to President Trump's peace deal, which is more than generous to this diminutive little fraudster. If Zelensky does not come to terms with an agreement soon, he will lose aid from the United States, and there will be nothing stopping his country from total defeat in the war against Russia. And then the people will ultimately come for Zelensky themselves. Meanwhile, the charges against New York Attorney General Letitia James were dismissed, but dismissed on a technicality. 3 different federal judges violated the Constitution and the law to give Letitia James a temporary walk. But after her mortgage fraud case was shamefully thrown out over these technicalities, New York Attorney General Letitia James got hit with a bar complaint over her alleged criminal acts. The Center to Advance Security in America submitted the complaint to the Manhattan and Bronx-focused Attorney Grievance Committee, urging them to launch an investigation into potential illegal and dishonest conduct committed by the New York Attorney General, Big Tish, in regard to her suspicious mortgages. The Center's Director of Research and Policy, Curtis Shuby, wrote, "Fraud, misrepresentation, dishonesty, and trustworthiness are all factors that the rules of professional conduct expressly factor in when weighing whether or not to discipline an attorney. The committee, therefore, should immediately investigate the allegations against Letitia James, and if by preponderance of evidence all allegations are substantiated, she should be disciplined accordingly." James had been indicted on October 9th after allegedly committing mortgage fraud, falsifying information on documents in order to receive a $109,600 mortgage on a property in Norfolk, Virginia, that she claimed was her primary legal residence. This allegedly allowed James to commit a $19,000 advantage, ill-gotten gains over the mortgage. Even though James claimed that the Norfolk residence was an investment property later and not her primary residence, in 4 separate disclosures to the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying Government, a Clinton-appointed judge threw out the charges despite the fact that this actually, based on the evidence, being an open and shut case. This is how deep the deep state will go to protect his own. But we shall see what happens next. Although the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and the FBI Director, Kash Patel, announced that the charges would be refiled, that remains to be seen. Meanwhile, 3 different federal judges violated the law and the Constitution to give both James Comey, the FBI Director, and Letitia James a pass. Once again, overwhelming evidence of the 2-tiered justice system that I'm all too familiar with. President Trump has a monumental task at hand in draining the federal swamp. As we learned during his first administration, personnel is policy. Many swamp rats were able to worm their way into his first administration, such as National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, John Bolton, who also has been indicted for illegally possessing classified documents, General John Kelly. You remember him? He's the guy who made up the suckers and losers claiming that President Trump had referred to veterans who gave their life in service to their country as suckers and losers. The problem is that at the time that Kelly claimed that Trump said this, there were 9 other individuals present. Not a single one could or would corroborate the claim. That's because it's false. And there was Mike Pompeo, General Mad Dog Mattis, and others. They impeded the America First agenda, and they tried to derail the Trump presidency at every possible turn. The new administration has been drastically better in terms of personnel, but some have still been able to sneak past the goalie, such as the SEC's Director of Enforcement, a guy named Sam Walton. Now, Walton is a multi-time Biden-Harris donor, even donating to Kamala Harris's campaign just 2 days before the 2024 election. Walton is a highly partisan zealot, masquerading as some kind of a neutral enforcer. Sam Walton was a key architect of the Biden-era assault on then-Chair Gary Gensler's concerted effort to destroy the cryptocurrency industry. It was actually Walton who drove high-profile cases against Coinbase, Binance, and Justin Sun, weaponizing regulations to stifle innovation and consolidate power in the hands of big centralized government. Sam Walton's actions reek of conflict, so you wonder how could he be in the number 2 position in the Securities and Exchange Commission. This is a guy who's pushing enforcement priorities that align with his leftist, anti-innovation, and anti-digital asset stance. President Trump himself is a crypto billionaire. Walden, if he could, would likely throw President Trump in prison for his wise crypto investments. Walden should be removed from the administration and placed in his important role at the SEC with an individual who's firmly in line with President Trump's pro-crypto agenda. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice is being investigated for its ties to something called the Southern Poverty Law Center. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan wants to see internal documents from the Department of Justice showing the extent of the relationship between the Department of Justice and the far-left Southern Poverty Law Center during the Biden administration. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center is an Antifa-type propaganda front. It's mostly a scam that defrauds little old ladies and well-meaning liberals who send millions of dollars in small donations. But they publish a list in which anyone who is a mainstream conservative or a Trump supporter is demonized as a Nazi, as a white nationalist, as a racist, or an anti-Semite. The Southern Poverty Law Center is a go-to resource for Antifa thugs and other left-wing dregs to find targets when they go on the hunt against their political enemies. The Southern Poverty Law Center even included Turning Point USA on their so-called hate list, removing it in disgrace after the assassination of the group's founder, my good friend Charlie Kirk. Congressman Jim Jordan issued a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi notifying her that his committee is continuing to investigate the Biden-Harris Department of Justice and the FBI's weaponization of federal law enforcement resources against conservative-minded Americans. Congressman Jordan believes that Bondi's predecessor, Biden Attorney General Merrick Garland, colluded with the radical left-wing Southern Poverty Law Center on matters relating to federal civil rights enforcement. Chairman Jordan cited records obtained once again by America First Legal, indicating that the DOJ's Civil Rights Division regularly met with the Southern Poverty Law Center staffers, sharing with them privileged and confidential government data, and let the Southern Poverty Law Center operatives train federal prosecutors. FBI Director Kash Patel very wisely cut all ties with the Southern Poverty Law Center and their sister organization, the Anti-Defamation League, which is most definitely not about defamation. That's a good start, but it must be followed with indictment. It's past time for these subversive conspirators to be thrown in jail after getting a fair trial, of course. It's not enough to expose the treasonous acts and stop federal cooperation with these groups that advocate hate, mayhem, and terrorism. It's time for real accountability. Heads must roll and fast, or we're never going to restore the Constitution in this country. Meanwhile, White House Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who I think is among President Trump's very best appointees, probably the greatest Treasury Secretary since Andrew Mellon, announced recently the Trump administration is hard at work cutting off all federal benefits for anyone who's in the country illegally, making it clear that those benefits are for lawful American citizens only. In a posting on social media, Bessent said, at President Trump's direction, we're working to cut off federal benefits to illegal aliens and preserve them for U.S. citizens. The U.S. Treasury announced that they will issue proposed regulations clarifying that the refunded portions of certain individual income tax benefits are no longer available to illegals and other non-qualified aliens, covering the earned income tax credit, the additional child tax credit, and the American Opportunity Tax Credit, as well as the Savers Match Credit. Additionally, President Trump has vowed to end all federal benefits and subsidies to non-citizens of our country, to denaturalize migrants who undermine domestic tranquility, and deport any foreign national who is a public charge, security risk, or non-compatible with our Western civilization. If you cannot obey our laws, if you are here illegally, you will be deported. The left is screaming about this, but they ignore the fact that Barack Obama deported 2.6 million illegals during his presidency. All of this comes in response to the terrorist shooting of two National Guardsmen and women in Washington, D.C., as well as the scandal I spoke of earlier in the program of Somalis in Minnesota committing welfare fraud to the tune of $250+ million, and then funneling that money back to anti-American terrorists in their homeland of Somalia. President Trump is doing an amazing job on stopping illegal immigration. We have essentially sealed our borders, but eternal vigilance is absolutely a key to stopping this scourge. We must continue to deport every single illegal immigrant before the end of this administration. Things are getting increasingly violent in New York City as Antifa and others fight ICE agents, and I predict you it's only a matter of time before President Donald Trump mobilizes the National Guard in the Big Apple. You heard it here first in the Stone Zone. Meanwhile, President Trump has yet again reiterated his desire to completely and totally eliminate the federal income tax. Now, here's an issue that is near and dear to my heart. President Trump said yesterday he hopes the United States can completely get rid of the federal income tax in the upcoming years, reiterating his belief that the revenues brought in through tariffs should be enough to end the current system of income taxes. Now, we didn't have a federal income tax until 1913. Prior to that time, under presidents like William McKinley, we generated more than enough revenue from tariffs to fund the entire federal government. June of this year was the first year in 15 years, probably the first month in 15 years, in which the United States actually ran a surplus, meaning we took in more money than the government paid out. The president is right when he says that we are bringing in billions of dollars more in new revenues, and he actually could, on paper at least, theoretically do away entirely with the federal income tax. The president has stated on the campaigns last year when he waxed poetic about the days of America when there was no federal income tax and hopes to fund the entire government through tariff income. Getting rid of income taxes and the IRS would force the government to shrink back to the levels prescribed by the Constitution and our founding fathers, as a matter of fact. So while he's at it, he also should get rid of the Federal Reserve, as far as I'm concerned. The president, of course, cannot just do so by waving a magic wand, but he can take substantial measures to undermine the Federal Reserve, the Internal Revenue Service, and other toxic aspects of the federal bureaucracy. This is what he must do, as the enemy within is a major problem preventing America's renewal. In April, when Jerome Too Late Powell is no longer the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, Americans, based on the current inflation rate and unemployment rate, will finally get the deep cut in interest rates that we deserve. And then this economy will actually cook. For those who say, Republicans will lose the midterm elections, I say to you, as a veteran of American politics who spent 50 years in the corroded rectum of the two-party system, that in American politics, a week is a lifetime. And therefore, anyone who wants to count the Republican Party as reconstituted by Donald Trump out this early is making a horrific mistake. In fact, I'll go on record right now to predict that there will be gains. Both Republicans in the House and the Senate will actually increase their margin after the last election because the economy of today, in which food prices have come down, but not low enough, gas prices have come down, but not low enough, interest rates have come down, but not nearly enough, and housing is not nearly as plentiful nor affordable as it should be. All of these things will improve based on the massive tax cut and regulatory cuts of President Donald Trump, plus the infusion of new revenues from tariffs. So don't be a panikin. The best is yet to come. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone. Whatever you do, stay with us for more hot politics on the other side.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. I'm your genial host, Roger Stone. We recently lamented the demise of the penny. The U.S. Mint will no longer be producing the penny, as producing the simple penny turns out to cost $3.87 per piece. So President Donald Trump announced that its production was stopped due to a lack of economic viability. Now it turns out the next casualty of modernity may be the nickel, which, due to big government regulations and inflation, is even more of a loser for the American taxpayer than the penny was. The U.S. nickel, which has been the mint's quiet nightmare, the raw melt of these coins is very simple math, now actually costs $13.78 to produce and distribute. So it's actually worth more as scrap than it is as money. This is a financial loss per coin that's been transpiring since 2006, exposing our government's relentless fiscal waste. So the humble nickel has become a casualty of the green energy boom, with surging costs of materials stemming from skyrocketing prices for its core metals. The simple nickel is 75% copper and 25% nickel, but this is driven by global demand in EV batteries, the batteries for electric vehicles. With 67 million electric vehicles produced worldwide to date, that's through the third quarter of 2025, $7.3 million of these electric vehicles in 2024 alone, and 20 million more electric vehicles projected for 2025. This is burning millions of taxpayer dollars, all the while purchasing power of this coin dwindles to near worthlessness. In other words, the cost of nickel and copper to be used in those vehicles is being driven beyond reach. So to clearly contrast, a profit is possible. Dimes cost just $5.76 to make, but they carry a 10-cent face value, delivering the mint a tidy $4.24 profit per coin. The nickel's enduring paradox, 5 cents in name, nearly 3 times that in cost, exposes deeper governmental dysfunction, while commodity spikes and legal rigidity beat more common sense-driven solutions by using cheaper metals or rounding to 10 cents. The nickel should join the penny in obsolescence. Its melt value actually exceeds 6 cents, and phasing it out with similar rounds to the nearest dime could reclaim tens of millions of dollars more for taxpayers. Experts push for cashback incentives or slow elimination, but Washington's traditions won out for now. Every time you hear nickels jingle in your pocket, remember, real fixes need Congress, not taxpayer subsidy. Until then, the nickel will keep rolling at the taxpayer's expense. They got rid of the penny. The nickel is most definitely next. So now I have to tell you, I never thought at my tender age of 73 that I would be a Garmento. But this past week, I rolled out my very own custom design menswear line. You can find it online. I was immediately attacked by people who don't understand my look, the classic silhouette of Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Clark Gable, Gary Cooper, the Prince of Wales, Edward VIII, but I favor a traditional Savile Row British and American Ivy League influence look, and I've introduced my very own clothing line. It's not for everybody, but it may be for you. In the meantime, I sustain ongoing attacks online from a guy named Derek Guy. Well, that's not his real name. He's actually a short, dumpy Chinese guy. He actually uses a picture of Elliot Richardson, who was an extraordinarily handsome guy, served as Attorney General under Richard Nixon, in his profile. And Derek Guy, that's a made-up name. But he's a guy who actually advocates that men wear skirts and dresses, not the guy I need telling me about how to dress. Thanks for tuning in today in the Stone Zone. It's always great to be with you to talk about politics and, yes, style. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
This is Roger Stone. The holidays are here, and it's the time of year when travel, crowds, and cold weather mean one thing. Everybody's getting sick. And in moments like this, you don't want to rely on the bureaucracy, the nonsense, or the slow-moving medical machine. You want control. You want to be prepared. You want options. That's why I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy, a company that actually puts you in charge of your health. You can go to allfamilypharmacy.com/stone, place your order online, and a licensed physician reviews it. Once approved, your medication ships directly to your doorstep. Fast, private, and secure. So whether you're looking for ivermectin, antibiotics, or everyday maintenance medications, All Family Pharmacy now has you covered. No waiting rooms, no runaround, no interference. This holiday season, don't gamble with your health or your family's health. Stay prepared, stay protected, stay in control. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/stone and now save 10% with code STONE10. Take charge of your health because nobody cares about your freedom more than you do.